The phones clank. Alrighty.
That lesson.
Okay. Now that Jeff is here, we are ready to begin. Actually, it just coincided with us going live. So welcome, everybody. No video tonight for the live stream, but you should be able to hear better, hopefully, is the intention with this. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our pledges. So let's begin. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag and to the Savior for whose kingdom it stands, one Savior, crucified, risen, and coming again, with life and liberty for all who believe. All right, welcome those of you who are here joining us virtually, those who are on the live stream. Good to have you join us tonight. Going to turn it over to Bay to introduce our devotion speaker.
You bet. Yeah, we are very thankful to have Megan Smith with us here tonight. Megan is a homemaker, but also has a background in elementary education and enjoys volunteering her time with Bible Study Fellowship, as well as writing children's curriculum in her church. Also has Hadley, right, who's in the 5th grade, and is here with us tonight. So thank you very much, Megan, for coming and sharing a devotion with us tonight. We'll leave it to you.
Well, thank you, Babe, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be here. It is such an honor to be here among you because you all encourage all of us with all the hard work that you do, and it's just an honor to be here and hopefully encourage you in God's Word. I want to kind of preface a little bit. This devotion, God had put it on my heart a couple of weeks ago, and actually solidified it a couple of days ago. And I am telling you that because it was given to me before the events that happened yesterday in our country. And I want to say that the words that God had put on my heart, they are for us today. God knew He would be here today, and He would know that we need to be encouraged in what He has for us. And so I really hope that what He has given me for us today is an encouragement to you, knowing that it was set ahead of time. So I want to lay a little groundwork. Where it all began was my husband was telling me a story, and he is a pilot, and he was telling me a story about how when pilots become stressed, or maybe they become uncomfortable in their surroundings or in the airplane, there's a thing called fixation. It's an actual thing, fixation. The pilot could be in a storm and they're trying to find the runway. Maybe they're in clouds and all of a sudden they pop through and they see the runway. Well, it's kind of like a moth to a flame. They're just so focused on that runway that they miss all of the things going on around them. They're fixated on that maybe they forget to put the landing gear down, or maybe they forget to do the flaps, and what happens? You crash and you burn. Or there's another instance where maybe you're in a storm and you're trying to get out of that storm and you're looking at that instrument and you're fixated on it. Well, you're missing all of the other warnings that they are telling you. And the reason that I'm telling you this is because it got me thinking about life and how we are similar to that pilot. First off, things happen that we think will never happen. And secondly, we can become fixated on a particular path where we miss God, just like that pilot. And so that also led me to my next thought. What happens when things don't go our way? Here's a thought. There are plenty of stories and examples in the Bible if we open it up and just find out what happens when things don't go our way. For example, there's the story of Noah. God gave him a specific plan. The earth was so corrupt, things were happening that I'm sure that Noah never thought would happen. And then boom, God says, build me a boat. And we can assume that a giant flood and a boat were not in Noah's plan. That he heard God and he followed God, even though that plan was different than his plan. Another example would be Moses. I thought of Moses and how God also had a specific plan for him and for Moses to lead God's people. Moses would be required on and on. We could look in our Bible and go on and on with examples. But honestly, if you look back, there's not one person in the Bible that God used that they could have guessed what God's plan was in that moment. And yes, we all know God's ultimate plan, the plan of Jesus, the plan of his return for his people. But what are we supposed to do today? What are we supposed to do here, and what are we supposed to do now? Especially when things are not going our way. Well, as we all know, we just finished a year and a night last night of things not going our way. Things happened that we thought would never happen. It was a year full of disappointment, a year full of loss or hardships, just to name a few. We felt lost, all of us, whether financially, whether we felt it physically, or whether we felt it emotionally. It impacted every single person one way or another. We weren't always able to do the things that we have always done, and that makes us feel unsettled. It makes us just feel kind of uncomfortable. We've been so used to, for so long, being in control, or somewhat in control of most situations. And is that why it makes us feel uncomfortable, because we don't have control? Is it the added stress of the unknown, or maybe it's because we are realizing that nothing in this world is going to last forever, and we don't have as much control as we previously thought? Sadly, when faced with a wrench in the plan, we get a multitude of reactions. Well, we saw that. We saw that even in this year among the body of Christ. We saw a multitude of reactions. We allowed division and passion for what we thought the plan to be to guide us and our choices. So what reaction from the body of Christ pleases God when we are turned upside down? Again, let's go back to the Bible. We can look at examples. I was looking at Mary, at Ruth, David, Paul. Like, the list is endless. How did they respond? Well, I would say that they responded in obedience. Every one of them. And because of their obedience, what happened? God's name was glorified and people's lives were changed. God did not ask each person to follow the exact same plan to get to the end result. But the beginning of each one of their stories was exactly the same. It was started with obedience and with faith. So we have an awesome opportunity to look at a new year as a fresh beginning. So we're starting this year off. And sure, the dates on this calendar, they don't change the enemy and they don't change his attacks. But the dates do give us an opportunity to look back and for us to reevaluate. We can look back and see how God's hand was at work, and that builds our faith, knowing that he will do it again this year. He is faithful. We can look back and learn maybe where we missed God, where our responses should have been more full of grace. We are all striving for the same thing, to know God and to love his people. That is our goal. And although all of the plans God has for us personally do not exactly match up, we can all start with a new beginning, with a heart. And our heart should be of obedience and of faith. Every day, waking up, spending time with the creator of the universe, who loves us, has a perfect plan for us, and is simply asking us to be obedient today, no matter what is coming. When something or someone is pressed, what happens? We see what comes out. So how are we to prepare ourselves and our hearts to glorify God when we are pressed? I honestly believe that that is cultivating a life of thanksgiving, and one that is dependent on God is critical in our responses that are pleasing to God. So what is our perspective of our situation, of the world around us, and simply on our task at hand? So recently I was reading a book from Elizabeth Hasselbeck, and it's called The Point of View. And she told a story of when she was younger, and she was in an art class, and her teacher put a crumpled up bag, like a brown paper bag, and she put a light shining on it. The instruction was, draw the bag. So Elizabeth was struggling to draw the bag to get started, so she raised her hand and she asked her teacher, how am I supposed to draw this bag? I can't draw all these cracks and crinkles and folds. And her teacher responded and said, I'm not asking you to focus on all the dents and the cracks and the darkness, because they will overwhelm you. I am asking you to see the light. Draw the light, and you will draw the bag. And her teacher wasn't just teaching art, she was teaching a method of how to adjust her perspective, which also translates to our perspective on challenges of life. When we daily make the choice to see the light, to be thankful, and to not complain about how things aren't going our way, we automatically adjust our mind and we tune our heart to the heart of God. And in doing so, we will also be in a place to hear God and his plan. We will gladly unfocus on our plan and obediently focus on his. be walking in faith, and our reactions to life wrenches will be pleasing and glorifying to God. And I get it, and we all get it. Life is hard, it's not perfect. But as believers, we have hope, and it is possible to be living that hope-filled life every day. How do we do that? How do we live a life of hope and a life of thanksgiving when everything around us seems to be hard, when it's not working, and when it simply is just falling apart? It feels bad. Well, there's good news for us. We are called to walk by faith and not by sight. But on a practical note, what does that look like? What does walking by faith and not by sight look like? How are we supposed to live that out? Well, we can be confident in knowing that when we fill our heart with God's word, our heart grows. And even though our head is screaming logically why we have no reason to be thankful in this situation, or why we have been wronged, or why we have been hurt, our heart of faith overcomes those thoughts, and we start to grow to a point that we don't listen to the world. We don't listen to logic, and we don't listen to or we do listen to what is in our heart, because that is what God has told us. When we make a choice every day to fixate on God, we are making a choice to be obedient, to be willing, and to be flexible. I'm learning that one. We are quickly able to ditch our plan and follow our Creator's plan. When we make that choice, it is a witness to those around us who can't logically see why we would have joy. As much as we don't like wrenches thrown in our lives, we can learn to actually see them as an amazing opportunity to glorify God and our hope that can only be found in Him. God's ways are higher than our ways, and I'm thankful. We are making choices every day, and our choices are: where are we going? What are we going to follow? And how are we going to respond? We are the pilot, and we have the choice to fixate on self-preservation when stress and hardships arise, or we can have a choice to step back, look at the situation, actually see the light, be obedient, and walk in faith. And the only thing that we know to do when we're thrown into hardships is to step back and to change our perspective. We will be on the right track of not fixating on one thing, but on the whole picture, the way God sees it, and we won't miss it. We have been given the greatest gift of all, the gift of Jesus and our salvation. So with that perspective, you can't help but laugh at what the devil might be trying to throw our way or your way. We know that we are more than conquerors, and God says He will be with us to the very end. The saying, "Chin up, buttercup," is one of my New Year's resolutions. Never stop looking up to our Father who is ever present in our need. So if you hear me saying in the days to come, if you're around me, you hear me saying, "Chin up, buttercup," it's by faith. Because I'm trying not to complain about things not going my way, but turning my focus on the one true way. I would like to end tonight with a scripture that I hope will encourage you, and it's something that we can take practically and stand on. And it's Proverbs 16:3, and it says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans." We want it to be God's plans. God's word never fails, and we can trust His plan today and for the days ahead. So I'll close this in a word of prayer. Father God, I thank you for today. I thank you for your word that encourages. Father, I thank you that you guide us, and Father, your light is our path. Father, I thank you for these men and women that serve tirelessly, effortlessly, Father, for your kingdom. Father, I pray for them. I pray, Lord, your grace over their jobs, Father, that they would continually look to you as their helper. We love you. We thank you for our school. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Thanks, Megan. Thank you. Thanks for joining us and sharing that word. Great reminders in constant unsettledness. So, Lance is not here today. He's been feeling fairly under the weather, so please make sure you're keeping him in your prayers. Vicky's joining us live stream. Kendra's joining us. So glad to have everybody here else in person. We have the agenda prepared. No adjustments that need to be made to this. Do want to note that the family satisfaction survey shows up twice. Part of the reason for that is some of that is personnel related that needs to be in closed session. So if you were curious about that,
Otherwise, agenda stands as it is, so need a motion to approve it.
Motion to approve the agenda as is.
Motion by Bay, second by Robert. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, have the meetings from December 10th meeting. Anything there discussion-wise or adjustments that stood out need to be made? Okay, if not, entertain a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Need a second?
Second.
Second from Lorna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll move into our reports. Matt, we'll start with you.
Nothing really to add, except we did get confirmation from Evangel and about our venue for graduation. So that was good to get that confirmed. So we'll be letting Don's gonna be communicating with senior parents. So it's kind of exciting to have that on the books, as well as for our senior breakfast venue too. So it's exciting to think about graduation, but nothing else to add, I don't think.
Okay. Any questions for Matt? Anything that stood out on his report? Okay, Marlis?
Yes, I do not have any changes to my report unless there are questions.
Anything from Marlis?
Yep, I had a question, Marlis, this is Bay. My only question was on the balance sheet, what goes in the due from other funds account for assets and?
Sure. Okay, it's coming really, is that bouncing around or can you hear me well?
No, we can hear you. Did you hear me?
Yep, great. Okay, the due to and from other, when you look at that first number in operating, that is the amount of money that is due from the other funds, the 2 million. So that means basically that is what the building fund owes the general fund. And that is the money that we, in essence, borrowed from ourselves so that we would not be paying interest on a loan. And instead, if we don't paying the interest on the loan versus the amount of interest you receive at a bank is a significant savings. And then when you look at the building and all those other ones, that's the amount that the general fund owes them. And so in designated and reserve, for instance, there's 725,000 in reserve fund. And then the remainder of that would be in the designated fund. And that would be the overcomers. That would be some funds that are left from the building gym project that we'll be using for future projects. Agency fund is such things as booster club, class funds, etc. And then there's also money for some fixed assets in the plant fund. So that is what all those are about. And that is because all of our money is in one bank account. I mean, generally, we don't have a separate bank account for each and every different organization and fund. And so that's just an accounting process you have to go through to keep things balanced.
Thank you, because that answered the second part where I thought, well, why is that same number in the building and not in the operations? But you answered that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, Bay, I couldn't quite hear that.
Good to go. Thank you.
Thumbs up, Buttercup.
Oh, okay. I thought it was another question. Sorry.
Okay, anything else from Marlis? All right, Dawn?
I have no additions at all, unless you guys have any questions.
The road trip to Atlanta?
Do what?
Road trip down to Atlanta or flights?
Yes. We're excited about it.
Good. Van rentals. We might be checking to see if there are any board members that would like to go on the trip. Since they're driving, we're getting 4 vans plus someone would need to drive a vehicle for pulling a trailer with supplies. So we're probably looking at.
I have a son who probably would not.
You don't have to drive him. You don't have to be in your van. No, the kids are excited. Mission. Going to Atlanta.
If only we had a van, and we're back to that.
Kids. That Monday of spring break, I think. Is that right, Eric?
Sunday.
Or Sunday, leave that Sunday.
Okay, anything for Mr. Tuck? Okay, Michael, Mr. Hour?
Yeah, I got just one thing to add. We had a service day with our junior high kids on December 18th, Friday before we got out for Christmas. We broke up into teams. Actually, it was Mr. Toll and Dr. Duran that organized the whole thing, did a great job with the organization. Our teachers took out teams of 10, 11, 12 junior high kids, and we just went around the community and rate leads and rate leads and rate board leads. Lots and lots of encouragement from some of the parents, from some of the community members that we met. Lots of good conversations. I think we finished up with well over 100 bags of leaves that we took out, or Mr. Toll took out to Chris Long's house, and he's still burning, so it takes a long time to get those taken care of. That's something that we will continue to add to kind of help the community, since we can't do larger off-campus things because of COVID things. We can do some things in the community. So I just add that to my report, that it was a great opportunity for our kids.
There's a lot of bags in the breakfast.
All right, anything else for Mr. Hour? All right, Ms. Pruitt?
Well, I want to make one correction on there. I said we had one second grader and one fourth grader that we added this semester, and we actually added 2 second graders and 2 fourth graders. So that was good. And we only have 1 elementary student in quarantine, so that's awesome.
Probably now it's just as good a time as any just to applaud principals and choir directors and band for concerts over this Christmas season. I mean, I think the flexibility to do those things the way that they were done and still be able to make those happen. I know the live stream of the kids program was a hit in the Martin household. So anyway, just thought that was a real positive thing. So gratitude to principals and those crews for making that happen. So, and everybody else who was involved in filming and sounding and all that stuff. You filmed directly, right?
Yes.
I mean, you were the.
Was the director.
All right, Linda.
Okay, one thing I was gonna add is I'm gonna give you an update of the year, since we've got most of the year and there'll be maybe a couple of things that'll straggle in. But all together with the banquet, the pledges, the personal visits, the year-end letter, and with outstanding pledges to the Overcomers 2020 campaign, we raised over almost $92,000. Then we had about $55,000 in sponsorships and only used about 20 of that for the banquet. So we have another 30 on top of that. We have a $5,000 check that came in, missed the deadline, but altogether that makes us around $126,779.90 for the year, which I think is extraordinary for a full year. The other thing I wanted to say that we did was we had a tuition assistance of $102,100, and then of the COVID CARES one we had was $9,050.15. So I didn't put that in there, that was another thing. And there were some other things like missions trip and other things that we collect from people, but that's basically the one that goes for the donation side of things. I just thought that was that.
Good deal.
Great.
Yep. Okay, any questions for Linda? B. Kelly?
I did not submit a report, but I will answer any questions if you have any. We spent the last month just supporting these other ministries or departments. Church board meeting, a school board meeting, but other departments, the school supporting the principals and the different changes in the comings and goings of our programs and all the different facility things we posted in the last little bit. And I'd say we're in a pretty good rhythm, truth be told, and I was really glad to be back in the groove this week. But it's going really well, and we jokingly say this, but the body count was low on Monday, lower than we had thought it might be. And it's all good. So I think that we're in really good shape. You guys have any questions about it?
Brocade still working out well?
Fantastic.
Great.
Good. Anything for Brian?
We'll add one facility thing that I found out today, just to talk to you about it. Our grease trap over at Liberty, the pitch or the grade at which it sets in the ground, it does not drain properly. And so we've had to have it pumped often because it will back up and then it smells in that building. And really what needs to happen is we've had it long out there a couple of times now. It really actually needs to be turned and pitched another direction out with the grade of the earth around there. So that is an undertaking in itself because where it's located outside the kitchen in that alleyway where the 7-8 car line is, require taking that up.
Scheduling.
Do it.
It's gonna be hard to schedule.
Exactly, yeah, it's gonna be a construction project, so it's an excavation of that and turning the way it sits, putting it back, or putting something else back, but, they knew it was gonna be close when they did it all, and there's just not enough grade there for the amount of stuff that flows through there for it to properly catch, trap, and then drain the other stuff off in an efficient manner without backing up. So I think this is the third time in the last 12 months that we had to have it pumped and serviced, and that's just what the smell is over there when it backs up.
Smells like fried chicken.
Not fried chicken.
Spoiled?
Not the word that came to mind, but sure.
Spoiled fried chicken?
Nothing fried, nothing chicken. Anyway, we can talk about that. We learned that today.
All right. Anything else for Brian? All right, anything to add to admissions report?
Probably just, at semester, we always have students that we lose and then we pick up some. And so we had just various reasons. Some were academic, some was financial. We ended up with like a net loss of 9, which sounds like a lot, but we had a net loss of 9 last year in a non-COVID year. So when you look at it that way, it's like, it's not that bad. So I think we had 16 withdraw and then 7, we gained 7. I think that's right. So I think we had a net loss of 9. So, but those students started. I know Delena's crazy busy. I know the other big news, you guys have to help me. Like we have 40, I think we've never had this many as far as in process. Or this was for the younger.
For the screenings.
For the screenings.
Next week and the week after, we've got like 40 or 42 scheduled, and that's, some years we haven't even had a full second day, and this is gonna be 2 full days.
Wow.
of screenings, so.
Yeah.
Great.
So, and then other things that were on, she met with us today as far as looking at open house and how we want to do that. And, our goal is to structure where we can still have people come in, but kind of try to split it out. And so we're looking at open house coming, I think we said right before spring break, I think the Thursday, 11th. Yeah. So, and then so with re-enrollment, getting ready, her world is just really ramping up right now with re-enrollment, and then open enrollment starting in March, so. I think
Some of
those are the
those
highlights.
virtual videos, and maybe Glenda, this question for you too, that we put together last fourth quarter or so, are they still pretty relevant, or maybe with some of that footage you took ahead of the banquet, would there be an
We talked
opportunity
about
to?
that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that today. I'm gonna look into that.
They also have some promotional, because with open house, there'll be some specific advertising that'll be pointing people to that event, but we also want to have stuff on the website
Get
That,
some good B-roll.
yeah, so there's maybe some good video we can use for that, so.
You'll find that for you, because you and Mr.
Nope. You could put the whole elementary concert on there for this time now too.
All right, anything else admissions wise?
The 16, were they fairly well distributed across all the sections?
You know, I don't know how many did you
I had
have?
6 that left before the game, so.
6,
we
and
had
what did you guys have? As far as that withdrawals?
I had 6, I believe, 5 or 6. I think I had 3.
Pretty distributed.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything fine arts wise that you know of?
No, just
Okay.
again, kudos to all of them for like you already mentioned, so.
Okay. Eric?
I did submit one. Basketball's heating up, coming back into the season. I'm trying to make up some games that we lost in the first semester with the boys, so getting that worked out. We do have a girls basketball player that's going to be reaching 1,000 probably by next week. On track, which is Izzy Rothing. If you've watched her play, she's fun to watch. So we're trying to time it right, but it probably won't be a home game, so we're working things out, getting the time for talking to the school that we're playing. It's a tournament, so it makes it a little more difficult.
Yeah.
Trying to stop it, recognize it. Swimming, they've got another meet coming up, the Ozark Invitation. Maggie Moore's already qualified for 2 events. 500 free and 100 back for state competition. And we have some others that are, their times are in consideration for the state competition. We've got a virtual cheerleading competition Saturday, so they've got good recording in the gym. We've been working on that for the last couple weeks, especially a month or so. And then we're in the process of scheduling spring sports. I'm already done with baseball, soccer, and tennis. And started golf yesterday, and then kind of track and kind of wait because we're track meets. We don't have our track, well, we don't have a track. So you kind of wait on everybody else to start sending out their emails and trying to piece together your schedules. And so, and then we've got 3 signings tomorrow in baseball. We'll be doing towards the end of the day. We've got Mr. Martin Simeon, Nate Butler, and Dylan Autry are signing as they want to do it together, which is always fun. Crowd and stuff, so.
Same school? What time is that?
3.
Where they're going?
So Nate Butler's going to Concordia University, Simeon's going to Hannibal, and then you've got Dylan going to Vanderbilt.
Any news on the class?
Yeah, we're class 2 in basketball, and so that's where we kind of figured we'd be, but like I was talking to Bay, is class 2 basketball in this area is pretty tough.
Yeah.
Crane, Billings,
Yeah.
Galena. So it's, whoever comes out of this area is going to be, it's going to go pretty far. So we have our Misha meeting tomorrow, which will update us on some things. We'll have our district meeting, sitting on one of the committees for the district. So we've got to figure out how we do the district. Misha pretty much just did a shotgun and said, here's your options. And there's not going to be one site until pretty much championship game for the district. So the higher seed will host the game. So then you've got, in our district, it's got Greenwoods. They've got the girls in ours, but their guys have gone to class 3. So that becomes a little bit complicated if you're going to host the boys and the girls kind of thing. So we'll be sitting down tomorrow trying to figure that all out.
I will brag, if you've not had a chance to watch the basketball game virtually, do so. We've got our new huddle camera that follows the ball. So if you watch one of our basketball games online now in the gym, we have a new device that follows the play. So it automatically goes back and forth and zooms in, does a lot of cool things, but it really changes the experience of watching our games live from the gym. So
It helps out with the numbers as well.
yes, it's uploaded, they do our stats and everything. It's very,
Yeah, so usually in the past, the coaches had to record the game on a normal camera, and they get back to school, put the camera up, upload it, it would take a while, and then they'd go home, the stats are done, and within the 24 hours, they shoot back. You can see now, we push the record, and once we stop the record, it uploads it automatically, it goes right in. In fact, I got yesterday's stats, because I'm on the list of stats and stuff, so I got yesterday's list, or yesterday's game already. Just all the stats and all the percentages and stuff like that, so. And we get emails from other coaches that, hey, can we have your game tape on so and so, so those are interesting. Trying to figure out, no, we don't want to get that.
For a fee of $19.99.
And there's an outdoor sports component as well, so we're.
So you can get that from the website?
From our YouTube channel, yeah.
YouTube.
Hey, were we gonna try to plug in the media on that 1,000-point achievement too? Just give them a heads up, KY3 or whatever, whenever the.
Yeah, so we'll notify them, and it's kind of like we notify them with the signings as well.
Yeah.
When they decide.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
What's the, it's the same guy that threw a beanbag through his car, and then they'll come out.
What's the tournament here that
Stockton.
we Stockton tournament?
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's close, they'll usually get some coverage already on it, so.
Okay, anything else for Eric?
Probably still early, but do you think you'll be able to do intramural for soccer for the elementary?
I tell you that we hate not doing it right now. The difference between volleyball, when they did it, you have a net, and it's not a physical sport, right? So you're able to keep them separated. Basketball becomes a little difficult because of the contact in the past, and we're trying to keep the classes together. Coach Worley and myself have been talking about trying to do maybe basketball camps, where we can do it based on classes, keep them together, and doing if there's ever, we can run up and down, it can be more of a 3v3 type of competition, keeping those classes together. Soccer would be the same thing. It's a contact sports, and basketball and the soccer is kind of based on the numbers as well. If I have, maybe out of Miss Bates' class, 6 kids, well, I can only do a 3v3, and so it becomes a little bit more complicated and stuff. So it's, we have tried putting our heads together, trying to figure out different things, and it's not easy.
That would be your position.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the reports. I think one of the things, just in general, what has been able to happen still over the past 4 or 5 months, I think is huge testament to, commendable and huge testament to admin team and the pace you guys have set. So thank you for what you've done with that. So old business, COVID continues to be amidst the old business. So Matt.
Well, as Brian Grimley, as far as the body count, when we went on break, our concern was we wanted everybody to not have to be fielding phone calls or emails as far as, parents reporting quarantines or positive cases. So we were kind of braced, and we did a reminder because there just wasn't a lot showing up on that report an illness tab where we direct our folks to enter stuff in. And so we just thought maybe on that Monday we were just going to get flooded. And really we started with, I think just like right now, I think we just started with just a few quarantines. And I think right now we've got, I know Sharon mentioned one, I think Liberty's got 2 kiddos and John's got 4. I think we have 1 positive case, and that person was positive, hadn't been back to school yet, so there wasn't anything. So things have been kind of slow, which is good. But we were prepared, and we'll just continue to monitor. We did get a little bit of some information. We've been wondering about school nurses, when they might get to be on the list for vaccination. And so there was some information that came out that school nurses are being considered, they have tiers. So I think there's a 1A tier that have the essential, the people that need to get vaccinated, but I think nurses are on the tail end of that. And so there's a possibility, depending on how many, how many extra vaccines they have, that school nurses possibly in February would get to be vaccinated if they so choose. And so, so I've been in contact with the health department. I kind of finding this out through my wife, but then calling the health department and having a contact person that when that comes down, that we'd be included and contacted. So if our nurses wanted to do that, school, as far as teachers, school personnel, the non-nurse people are considered 1B. And so, but I have no idea when they're looking at when teachers will be vaccinated. But it is good to know that our nurses would be hopefully soon able to be vaccinated if they so chose. So, but other than that, we're just kind of monitoring, and we'll just continue to, we kind of want to try to have as much normalcy as possible. And as we were talking about open house, the thought of, well, do we want to bring people in? And then we remind ourselves we got people coming in for basketball games. And so what can we still do and do safely and structure? And so I think that's what our goal is. We're thinking about spring concerts, what that'll look like. I think they're planning to try to do those concerts as late as possible, just in case, we can still do things in person. But everybody's plugging away. Anybody have any questions on the COVID front? It was a nice break. I didn't say the word day zero one time. Not one time. It was very, very nice. I know everybody else enjoyed it too, having a break from that.
All right, anything on that? All right, new business, go to the Family Satisfaction Survey report. Up front, thank you to those in the NCA community who participated in the survey. A lot of newer family engagement for sure, which is always helpful with that. Thanks, Kelly, for your summary report of it all. Being able to reduce down 132 pages of data to that is very, very helpful. So, certainly appreciate that. Although you use really small font to get it to however many pages you use, but still. But grateful for that, and board members who obviously, in addition to just sorting through it, the online forum, just so we had kind of a tool where we could kind of see some thoughts as they were going there. As a reminder, as we talk about this, we're going to save some of it for closed session. Anything personnel related, we need to make sure that we save for closed session. And just so that there's broader awareness, board and otherwise, the admin team takes the survey and works through the process of going through their areas and reflecting on what needs to be addressed and adjusted moving forward. Board reviews this individually in advance, as well as what we're doing here. But this really, even for the board, is not just a one-time, we do it tonight and then it's done, but really paying attention. I know Jeff in his comments highlighted this, the need to make sure that what is it that surfaces from this that we need to, especially at strategic planning in a couple weeks and on beyond that, what is it that needs to stay fresh as we move forward? Certainly want to acknowledge that we value and appreciate this feedback, and it is heard. And even if everything doesn't get acted on entirely that comes up, one of the things that's always interesting in these surveys is the same issue presenting or producing separate results or different results in terms of responses to that. So anyway, as we just kind of go into a conversation on this, turn it over to Matt, and we will kind of just work through the discussion from there.
Well, again, I echo what Matt said with Kelly, and Kelly even added some things to the dashboard, some graphs and charts too, which are good for comparison in terms of looking at last year. And then you think about last year being normal and then comparing to this year, I think you would kind of maybe expect there to be some discrepancies, not because of anybody, anything. It's just the nature of COVID. But if you look at, I know from a distance, this looks like what Bay referred to as one of those puzzles you stare at, and then you see the Statue of Liberty. You look at it long enough, Statue of Liberty appears. But even if you're not looking at the individual categories, what stands out is how close last year and this year is in terms of whatever category you're looking at, in terms of just, wow, I mean, there's a difference of hardly, and I think that speaks volumes for our teachers and our school and our board just on how we've handled this year. I think our retention and our enrollment starting the year is a reflection that people are like, hey, we believe in NCA and we're gonna stick with this. And so when you look at just the different categories and comparing last year to this year, almost negligible in terms of comparisons. What I like to do is on some of these questions where you have the strongly agree, and before I forget, Kelly, the response last year was 41, 42%, and this year was 38.
And this year's 38%.
30, okay. So just a little bit of difference there. But, you know, some of what I'll look at, you've got that Likert, you know, the strongly agree to strongly disagree. And so what I'll tend to do is like, what's the total percentage in that strongly agree or agree, especially on, you know, when they're rating, you know, junior K through 12, NCA provides a quality education. And so that's just in my mind, I kind of look at that and so you got 97% of our families, you know, agree or strongly agreeing on that. And our programming reflecting a Christian perspective, 97% are either strongly agree or agree. And I even, you know, now that I look at this, when it talks about NCA prepare students for post-secondary study, I wish that was, we could get, because that says 84%, but a lot of the parents are doing that based on what they see now. But if you ask any parent after the kids graduated, you'll see that they're like, you know, and some we have that answered the survey that have a kid that graduated, that like, man, they were over prepared. So obviously without going through all of these, you look for, you know, as we look for trends. You know, sometimes you'll run across something or a comment that you might consider an outlier, but it's not something that we all go, well, I'm not going to pay any attention to it, even though if it seems like it's out there. Something that's important that we look at, is this a perception? Maybe we know, well, this really isn't true, but if there's a perception, we need to still look at that because that, you know, that perception can be reality to somebody. And we recognize there can be comments based on one experience that someone has on whether they're having a bad day or I'm having a bad day, and they're one interaction with me. But someone else looking at that go, well, I know Jeff, he's a nice guy. I don't see that. Or just, you know, so there's those things that you work through, but it's always still a reminder of, you know, no matter what that category is of things that we can still be doing to be better. Matt mentioned as far as any of the comments that dealt with particular issues, those are things that they look at and address with teachers as necessary. And so they've given you some feedback on that, and we can talk about more in closed session. I know the board shared some comments as they on their shared document in terms of some observations. But, you know, just overall, given being a COVID year, I mean, overall the responses, when you're looking at everything in the 4, for the most part, and that's the other thing, as I'll go through 4 point whatever, hey, that's good. And you see a 3, like, okay, that might catch my attention in terms of how we go through all this. But that, and with Kelly putting things together, you know, comments as it relates to the facility. You know, some people say, well, I didn't really know what to rate because I haven't really been in the facility that much. And so those are some of the things that I think are that are, you know, maybe have to do with a little bit of the reporting and the scores. So, you know, we make some notes. Those are things we'll continue to talk about, you know, especially as it relates to what we do with the information from here, communicating to our families. State Academy usually plays a role with that. Homework is always a topic that comes up. And so looking at homework, looking at the consistency, do parents see a consistency as they progress? Does it seem like a natural progression? If not, why is that? You know, there are some things I think that is related to, you know, people asking questions about instruction. COVID has impacted classrooms based on what teachers might be able to do as it relates to putting kids together in groups or experiments. And maybe the teacher has to pretty much kind of do it because of the way the kids are spaced out and the kids maybe don't get that hands-on experience. And so I think that's played into some things. And so I think from here, if there are questions that you guys have, or obviously if the principals or any of the administrators have feedback in terms of some of the things that they picked up on, you know, communications is always important, kind of looking at what that looks like. But overall, really good supportive feedback with COVID, things that parents brought up that were, hey, the way this happened, we're not, that wasn't great, but we understand that was COVID. That's nothing that, the school could do anything about. But overall, just a lot of appreciation for how we've handled things. And so I think that's been that's been encouraging. So I don't know, from there, if you guys have further questions regarding, or just sharing your observations too, because it's a chance, anything that you want to share, for folks that are listening as we're streaming, some other observations that might be good for folks to hear. So I'm open to that, or principals, if you want any observations that you're looking at.
Marlis, you too, anything that stood out from your areas in this?
I think it's always the same question, and that is multi-child discount. And last year at the meeting, I did a demonstration of what it would take to have a multi-child discount. It's kind of, if you have 4 children, now let me rephrase that. If you have X amount of money, you have to raise an X amount of students. It's a matter of how you share the wealth or distribute the expense. However you want to look at it, it's the expense to parents, and for us, it's the income. But you basically have X amount of money to create X amount of students, that must create X amount of revenue. And when you do the multi-child discount, it automatically increases the first child and each child therefore, in order to be able to give the discount. And so I think at the time of enrollment, we do say that we have multi-child discounts through the tuition assistance program. I think maybe just thinking of more creative ways to share that information. Sometimes you just don't know who's going to need it and how deep you need to go into that whole discussion. But it is something that Delana talks about, and employees or not employees, families are always welcome to call and talk with me, and I can provide further information. But I think that's the biggest issue. And as far as the cost of tuition, outside of a second revenue source, and I know that we have all talked about that at times, different ways to look at it. Again, you're back to the same thing. What ways do we have to create revenue sources for our school? And we'd have to really get outside the creative thinking box. And, that's a possibility. I know that I've talked with a couple different ideas with somebody along the way. But the other thing I would say, of course, is that we must talk about the tuition assistance program. And we recognize that this is the first year coming up, this budget we're going to have this coming year, that we will no longer will receive $100,000 donation that was given every year. And so I think the other issue is you have to find a person who's really convicted to give to that cause, and having a endowment or a fund to support that would of course make a difference. And I think it's just ongoing education. But I think the multi-child discount just shows up over and over. And just another little thing I'll add on that is the challenge that you have as well is when you multi-child discount, you are automatically discount every second, third, and fourth child, regardless of a person's income. And so when you then will take situations where we have people who are perhaps, are they willing and are they capable and do they desire to pay the full tuition? And then if you change that, that automatically sets it all, the price goes up for everybody when we do that. So it's just an ongoing communication and ongoing situation with Christian school education. And I don't think there is one absolute answer. It's just something you have to talk through and just decide where you think it's most likely we are able to best, not to meet the needs of our families. It's how do we best meet the needs of our families? That's to me really the bottom line. So I don't know if that is enough information, but that's kind of what I see primarily.
Yep, appreciate it. All right, principals, other admins, anything you guys stood out in your areas that you wanted to highlight?
I will kind of just add a little bit to the homework situation. That was our lowest score, which was 4.1, so it's really not terribly low. But you get, too much, not enough, too much, not enough, the balance. But I was able to meet with each of the grade levels on Monday and talk through some of that. And in first grade, we were able to kind of revamp it a little bit and take it down a bit to make it more in line with what the progression is into second grade. And then in third grade, I was able to talk with them. They had made a no homework rule because they didn't want to overwhelm parents because of COVID. But now they're going to go ahead and start implementing some of the things that they would have normally done as far as homework is concerned, and that will put it into the progression from second to third to third. So I think we got a pretty good progression now, making the changes that we talked about.
Michael, Don?
No, the only thing with us, with the homework issue, that's something that we address each year because we've seen that consistency in our surveys with that. And I think the big thing with us is trying to determine what homework is purposeful and what homework is not needed. So that's really what we work on more at our division to determine that. And that's just where I think we can make a big difference there.
I think the other thing we run into is that we encourage, or something we need to continue to encourage parents, if they feel like that their child is like, man, it just seems like they're spending a lot of time, to talk to the teacher, because their kiddo maybe is taking an hour on something that the teacher, if they know this, like, well, that should only be taking them 15 minutes. So maybe if you drill down a little bit, you find out, some kids are just very, I got to make sure every single question. And so you kind of maybe get into some things that aren't, that's more based on the individual child. And I know in high school, sometimes probably what can happen is also you have multiple classes and sometimes the ebb and flow of a quarter, it just seems like everything kind of hits at once. But again, that's kids advocating. And I know Dawn and our teachers try to be aware of that. And if kids are just actually getting slammed and there's a test coming up, I think our teachers have been really good about trying to be flexible and recognize, hey, we can kind of try to create some margin for them so they're not so stressed out. But that communication from parents to the teachers is really a good first, because it's hard to say a blanket, there's too much. Well, what do you mean? And is it related to a certain content area for that kid? And so maybe there's some deeper issues. But again, it's about that communication. So
yeah, and one thing too that's really become a part of our culture over the last 4 to 5 years even is emphasis on allowing some startup time at the end of the class period always for homework, so the kids can get started on that and have teachers' guidance there if they have questions at that time. And as I get into classrooms, that is something I see all the time. In those classrooms, I think that's something Matt implemented several years ago that we started.
And the other thing we get, our parents, being able to take advantage of dual credit, or not just dual credit in our city class, but the classes that they can take with jury. Parents are like, oh, we're all about that, and which is good, but then they forget, can that kid be, they're adding their load. And so now it does seem like they have more homework. Well, they're also now taking a class that is not, and that's even tougher because those teachers are off. And I think with jury, those are high school teachers teaching that, but it's still, there's not the flexibility to work with. So we have kids that sometimes bite off more than they can chew. And so that's something that we've got to kind of be careful.
A lot of those dual credit classes are based online, so kids have to be self-motivated, to use their study hall time if they're in that study hall to do that. And sometimes kids at that age aren't the best at making those decisions to use their time wisely. But it's a series of things.
It's a great opportunity for our high school kids, but it does create extra work for our counselor, because we've had, when we first started this, you find out a kid enrolled in a class and it's the end of the semester and they thought they dropped the class. They're still in the class, and then maybe it's a class they need to be eligible for sports. So it adds some responsibility, but yeah, there's a lot of things that can play into that. But again, overall, in terms of with our families, I think a good reflection of what's going on.
Michael, anything to add to any of those conversations?
Just what stood out, besides homework's always kind of touch base on that, is just the service aspect. We've got a lot of students that want to do a lot of things, but then trying to take 115 junior high kids somewhere to do something, that is a challenge, especially when we have limited bus drivers, we have limited transportation to get kids there. So that's why we've guided and organized some things to try to look local, where we can just go across the streets. I think we'll see a lot more than that, but that's been the challenge. COVID has really been hard to be able to do some things that we were able to do before. We have yet to be in our building a full year yet. This is year 3, and we've done 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So once we finally get a full year, we can actually get some things, together. Yeah, that's right.
Matt, I'll piggyback on that. That was something I saw too. I think there's 2 schools of thought there. One, we do a lot more service projects than maybe people realize, so maybe we need to do a better job of like letting people know what we do. And then also, we're trying to find things that are actually service driven, not just collecting money from people. Because I know that you have every grade, every club, everything, everybody wants to ask something from our families, and we just kind of have to limit that. And so we're trying to be more creative on actually skin in the game kind of service projects versus just tell mom and dad to bring us something. We're even looking at maybe doing a school-wide service project coming up soon. We've been working on that a little bit. I don't want to say anything yet because it's not for sure, but we're working on a way that it's not just collecting, but it's also learning and really knowing what it means to serve. And COVID does not make that easy, so I'll have to reiterate what he says, but I do feel like I've been collecting ever since I saw that, all the things that have been done so far this year. There's been a lot, but maybe we need to dedicate the next warrior to that area to, let people know a little bit more about what we're doing. So I think there's COVID, there's finding the right opportunities, and then maybe doing a better job of communicating.
Okay, board, questions, reflections, things that stood out, big picture items especially?
I just think echo what Matt and everybody said. It was overall good results or good responses in a COVID year, for the most part. I think for anybody listening on the phone, it's again very clear that, like Matt mentioned, these are actionable things that everybody takes into consideration for what the next steps that we use with them. And so we're very appreciative of everybody who submits the surveys, follows up with the information.
I just want to reiterate, as I commented, not let this be a once a year thing that we all do, because as a parent, I was chosen to fill it out in my household this year. It does take some time to give that feedback, and so if we can share in our communication touch points or something, it's like, hey, this is something that we're putting in place based on your response from the survey. And if they hear that in May, then it's different than if they hear it in January and February, the only 2 times a year, or if we hit that message again in the fall, gearing up to the survey. And I do think it'd be a great opportunity where we're allowed to bring people together, but let's foster some more conversation among the parent body on these topics. I feel burdened to identify the actions of these, and I can't imagine the burden that our principals and teachers are feeling to solve these problems single-handedly, and I don't think that needs to be the case. I mean, we have a vocal audience, even if it was only 40% here, but that's still quite a few people that we can leverage a lot of talents and skills and abilities to help us find these unique solutions that we're looking for. If we can use that venue and find that opportunity for some focus groups or whatever else is the right way to gather people together there.
And I would piggyback on that, just to also for us to do a better job of, you don't want the satisfaction survey to be viewed as, this is my one time a year, or I don't want to say anything, and then here's the survey. When a lot of the things that will come up are something you'll look at, I wonder if they asked anybody about that, or I wonder if they talked to the principal, or because that's what you want to foster, that communication. So those things are being, those concerns, because if we know about something and it's communicated, we're working towards working through that, and not, even though there's still a role for doing the satisfaction survey, but for a lot of these, you just want parents to feel comfortable with approaching whoever is in an area to help them work through whatever's going on. And so I think that's the other reminder of just that communication. And I think in a year like this, there can be this idea, yes, I know you can still email and call, but just the idea that COVID has kind of kept parents out of the building, I think in their mind can also play into, well, I don't want to add to everything else that's going on. And so maybe they kind of just hold back a little bit because I think they just want to be helpful. And so which I think just encouraging that communication, and, you know, everybody's very responsive. And so I think we want to continue to encourage that too.
I think we did well with our COVID survey midsummer this year, and we really leveraged that feedback to help line out our policies when we didn't know exactly what direction to take. And I think that's possibly or probably one of the reasons our response to how we handled it is so favorable, because it wasn't just our dictatorship, if you will. It was, we did some things. We changed our course, I know, on that COVID committee, the medical committee a little bit too, changed course based on some of the feedback from the initial thoughts we had. So I don't know, maybe kind of a semester exit survey in May would be another chance to touch point, and not the full thing by any means, but if there's 10 or 20 issues that have percolated up, we could say, hey, now that you've made it through the year, you know, these were the things that were on top of mind in the middle of the year. Now that the full school year has ended, you know, tell us, can you see some actions, or do you still share the same opinion? And then we can digest that a little bit over the summer with something to come back into the semester with in the fall too.
And I think Robert had even brought in the idea of some sort of here's what's being done with this as well. And I'm part of what I'm wondering is if there's not a way that we can communicate that in very specific ways, not say, you know, here are the 500 things that have 500 ways that we've responded, but really identifying some of those big ones and saying, you know, I think it's helpful, not just in this context, but broader, to know those homework conversations that are being had with teachers. Because I think that, number one, it reinforces the idea of the feedback is valued, which it is, but it also shows here's practically how some of that is done.
Action was taken.
Right. And what that looks like. So, and maybe part of even that strategic planning is identifying some of these things, not only as it relates to how do we address this at State of the Academy, but how do we do some broad scale communication about some of these things so that people see obviously there are things that we can't, comments wise, that can't get shared and all that, but just being able to say, here's the outcome of that, so that if however we choose to measure that down the road, it's showing that sense of here's what it's leading to. Okay. Other observations? Obviously, I always pay attention to the spiritual growth types of questions and where those things are. I certainly, you know, on those big picture mission things to board wise, I think that's always so important for us to pay attention to. What's that look like in terms of how that's being perceived as being accomplished? So.
And I think you mentioned that, because I think that's something we usually touch on, the things that you would kind of categorize, and these are the things that keep us here. And it's always, Kelly, we talk about this, it's always that mission. It's always about the teachers and the relationships. That's that place and that environment. In fact, I think when we were ranking those, as far as what they consider valuable, I think those things, the cost was even down there. And so they even recognized these things are, yes, we understand we're paying for this, but cost was down, and that's always consistent, which I think that speaks to us staying true to our mission. I think it's important.
Lisa, anything to add? Robert? Jeff, anything else? Dustin? Lorna? Okay. Any of our online participants, anything else? Okay. Appreciate, again, board, appreciate the time spent in reading through and digesting that as well. That's important stuff for us to be doing, this for sure. So
Thanks again, Kelly, for making
yes,
it easily digestible.
yes.
Family satisfaction clip.
Always appreciate it.
Yes.
Could you do that with the book of Jeremiah next?
Those novels that was a picture every other page, like, hey, I got this without having to read the full.
Survey form.
Survey form. All right, next item is 2021-22 draft school calendar. This is not ready for approval by any means, but just decided it's good to kind of get this out on a preliminary draft form, highlight some of the things that stand out on it so that we can, you know, before we present it or before we go through the approval of the calendar next month, be able to highlight some of those things. So Matt, anything that you want to draw attention to?
Usually we try to have this in January, and I just didn't get to the point where you could have it to look at it, because I didn't want you to have to look at it with a week and then try to approve it at the same time. And so it's not going to hurt anything approving it next month. But basically, something that's to remember, a change from this school year. With the legislation, the school had to start later. The public schools had to follow that, and so that we all started a little bit later. And we decided, I think, the consensus of the board, and I know Marlis especially liked starting a little bit later. And really, to be honest, from an administrative standpoint, when we come back in August, when school starts within that, it goes so quick, and trying to be ready. So that was nice. I think that gave us a little breathing room, especially this year. That was helpful as we were preparing with COVID. But if you just take the calendar and pretty much stay true to what we did this year, this is what very similar as far as looking at Christmas. We would do a day probably back. I think that's important for the teachers to have a day to kind of reset for the semester. Obviously, this year is going to be a lot different than, when I say the year I'm looking at for 21-22 calendar. Something that we keep telling every year that we're going to do and we forget is January's board meeting. When we come back from break and all of a sudden, if we're meeting the same week, we're all getting back, we're trying to get board reports, we're doing board reports. You only have like a week or two of what would I write in my report. So you'll notice that on January's date for a board meeting would be the 13th instead of the 6th. So that would be a little bit of a change, but pretty much we're trying to get 170 days. One observation from this year was, we usually don't have to have a full week of school the first week. I know everybody's like, oh my goodness, that's a grind. Your first, you're coming back from summer and it's a full week. But if we start on a Tuesday, that day's got to get put somewhere. And if you tack it to second semester at the end, for this coming year, we'd like to end on the 20th. If you add that day, you're trying to come back, and then you got to come back for one day, which you don't want to do. It's not the end of the world. It was a little bit of a grind, but Thanksgiving, if the board still wants to do a full week.
Everybody looks at Lisa.
Lisa, were you the one that started the whole Thanksgiving? People don't know what they owe you. You could get really famous.
So people just need to remember that first week of school, when it's a whole week, we could say this could be.
The next week is a short week, and then the next week's a short week. So you kind of.
So I don't know if there are questions from the board regarding the calendar. Just a reminder, we look at the minimum number of hours, the state uses for high school credit, like 1,044. And when we calculated our hours, we're above that, and it gives us a little bit, of a cushion. So that 170 days is kind of our sweet spot that we try to stay around. But Christmas and, I mean, there's nothing in there that's different from this year. Obviously, the dates on here for things like the back to school picnic, those are all things that can get added later as we hope that we'll be able to have a more normal start to the year. But does anybody have any questions regarding the draft?
So Nikki, I think you might have said this, but I don't know if you heard, she's sending a question about, bring faculty back on the 3rd and students on the 4th, the
Mhm.
same.
Yeah, it's on the. Yeah, we're gonna do that.
That was nice, starting on Tuesday.
On the makeup days of the 24th and the 25th, is there a reason why we were not gonna do that on the 23rd, or is that just a typo in May?
That, you know what, I think those, Robert, just didn't get changed.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, that would,
What was it? I'm sorry.
on the makeup day, we would change to the 23rd and 24th if we need it.
Oh, yeah.
We can usually absorb 3 to 4 days and not have to go into making days up. But just, you never know, just. in
I
case.
wasn't gonna say it. Yeah, that's I mean, the ability to use, can we leverage some of our virtual resources
I
now
mean, it really
to
speaks for your snow day excitement.
Well, and that's, you know, and that brings to light, that is something that with public schools, with their funding, they have to be, of course, we don't have to worry about that, but, you know, for public schools, if they have a day that they want to try to, they have AMI days, alternative method of instruction, but they still can count. As long as they're saying kids are doing something, teachers are doing something. But what it made me think about, this morning when I got up early to see if it snowed, and of course, looking out and nothing, but there were a few closings, I think, in Arkansas, but.
But all of
it
them
said
were
snow-
virtual.
But they said, and so what that, you know, and I think that's what schools are having to talk about. So if we do have a virtual, you know, you've got the capability, which you might not, you don't have all your kids necessarily taking their things home. Whether you let the kids have their snow day, or if you say, hey, you can be at home and you can, you know, teachers can, but with COVID, there's been examples of schools just say, hey, the teachers and the kids need the mental. And so, and again, that gets kind of into the AMI where they'll give some kind of assignment, but kind of soft where they can still do that. But that brought up a point that if we have a snow day, are we gonna say teachers might have something for kids to do, but we probably need to discuss it so there'd be consistency. So you don't have some teachers are assigning something, some aren't. But anyway.
The 3rd grade class talked about it and decided that they needed to have their snow days because you lose the magic of snow days.
Exactly.
If you have snow days and then have homework.
They don't have homework.
What
are they?
I saw children on the playground today.
But then it
playing
says
snow,
virtual.
so it was a snow day at school.
Why put it out?
Yeah.
You miss out on snow days, it's Tennessee.
Right.
That's right.
You miss out.
Do that.
Very far out, will be.
No, it's not.
I don't know, I can't remember the last time we've had a real, I mean, we've had some days where maybe the roads were a little slick, but in terms of like kids getting to go out and really enjoy the snow, we haven't had anything. So, but getting back to the calendar, that's, unless there are things that the board would, you know, have questions about to tweak, so that way when we come in February, I don't see this changing, but it's just an opportunity for you all to see that and then let me know if there's questions or concerns.
Does look very similar to this year's calendar. It's not identical, but I had to check and make sure Christmas did fall on a different day last year.
I checked November, that's the first thing I did.
Yeah. But with our school date or start date moving back, it feels like things crunched against the Christmas holiday too, and we kind of just fell out of school underneath the tree this year, and the break was short also. But did you, any administrators or Matt, hear any feedback or see that time off would work repeatably next year again?
Yeah.
And proximity to Christmas?
Children complain.
Is that?
My children complain.
Yeah. I know that I heard there were some vacations that started a little bit early too, but don't know.
And we still have, and I think
Probably
that's when, you know, sometimes even whatever our calendar is, you know, it's typical that we'll have some families they'll leave a day or two early, or they get back a day or two late.
Wasn't overly disruptive or probably discernible from the other absences that were occurring.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a little hard for teachers, especially in your semesters, within the, in the high school, because you look at the days, you've got 79, like yours, 79 in the first semester, 91 in the second. I mean, you wish they were a little bit more even, but you don't want to go back to the days where you come back from Christmas break and then you get finals. That is awful.
Yeah.
Awful. Just for the sake of trying to have even semester.
I think it helps keep the kids focused over break.
There you go. And so all that's a byproduct of moving start date back is, I mean, we were having that conversation in the Martin household because even though we approved the calendar back in January, our Christmas vacation plans were starting that Sunday. And we had that, oh no moment in about November when we realized that kids still have school on Monday and Tuesday. Anyway, but Anna was saying she doesn't remember being in school on her birthday and how much that has shifted, I think, just with the timing of that. But,
It was a week to 10 days almost, depending on where the weekends fall, right? Yeah. At the beginning.
Hey, Brian, I think he's saying that there's tons of reverb and it's hard to hear. Is there something that you can do?
All right, any other questions about the calendar at this point? Okay, well, that wraps up open session, so that deals with the reverb for now. We will take a few minutes and come back for closed session.